we're specifically talking about procuring supplies from Alcon today. Each organization, each company is a little different in some way. So the first thing to know about Alcon, they donate to local eye care clinics and short-term medical missions. The local eye care clinics are typically clinics in another country that are sponsored by a 501c3 or supported by a 501c3. And then also they will give to short-term medical missions that are going out of the that originate in the United States to go to another country. The two most important things to remember before asking for Alcon products is your lead time needs to be at least 4 to 6 weeks, because if your application comes in less than 4 weeks, they may not have supplies available. Also, you need a letter of invitation from the country, from the country's Minister of Health. And if you don't have a letter of invitation, either from the Ministry of Health or an in-country hospital or organization that is governed by the Ministry of Health, then sometimes they will not process your application. So those are the two important things to remember. Now, as an overview, we're basically going to talk about the eligibility questionnaire, then the application, then the mission and the follow-up. All requests for Alcon are submitted online. And then at the end of our presentation, I'll have links to the website for Alcon and their contact information, and also my contact information if you need more information. So as we go on to the eligibility questionnaire, there are two questions. First, is the requesting organization a 501c3? Yeah, you can go to the next slide. Or is the physician requesting supplies sponsored by a 501c3? And also, does your mission take place outside the United States and originate from the United States? So if your answer is yes to both of these questions, you'll be redirected to another website for the actual application for Alcon. If it's no, then they are going to pull up a screen with their contact information to see if, maybe you can talk to them and maybe they can find a way to help you out. So those are the two questions. So if you answer yes, they're going to redirect you. That's, you skipped one, yeah. I was going to say they'll redirect you to a website, and I put a screenshot down in this. It's hosted by Cyber Grants. And if you have never gone in to request supplies, you'll go first time user, you create a password, and you kind of create an account. If you've done it before, then you'll use your email address and the password you've set up in the past, and then you'll log in. Okay, so after you log in, you'll have an application. And in the application, there's some specific details that they ask for. This is the basic information they're asking. And I actually have a PDF which actually describes each of these items that are needed. So I don't know if you can see this. Yep, that's the PDF. So for instance, the healthcare professional contact information. You're going to need name, address, telephone number, email, fax, website, etc. And this is your main ophthalmologist or your main medical person who is going. Then you'll need destination information. So the city, the country, facility name, rural village is not really acceptable. You'll need your letter of invitation. You'll need your dates of your mission, which also include the date that you need your supplies, that your supplies are required. We typically ask for supplies 10 days to 2 weeks in advance of departure. You'll need sponsor information. That would be like Vision Outreach International. You need their contact, address, tax ID number, etc. And then you also need the letter of intent, because you're going to have to upload all this information. You'll type some of it in the boxes, but like the 501c3 letter, you're going to upload that to this application. Product information at the end. Well, mission specific information is the number of surgeries or patients that you plan to see and what type. Product information is a list of Alcon products and the quantities of each product. Now, I typically keep an Excel sheet on my computer with product numbers and the name of the product. And then I can just put down in my Excel sheet exactly what I need quantity wise, and then upload it to the application. Keep in mind, the reason you want to do this for at least 4 to 6 weeks ahead of time is because sometimes inventory is limited and they might not have a specific medicine. But if they know in advance, far enough in advance, maybe the medicine or the product would be available. And then you'll have to list any additional eye care providers. And then last but not least, you need to kind of let them know what the follow-up care will be in the country that you will be in. So after you get through the application, oh, okay. Oh, thank you. Once you submit your application, you complete it and submit it, you will receive a confirmation email, because this will go to the contact person that is actually filling out the application. So you'll receive a confirmation email, and unless otherwise noted, you should receive the supplies by the requested receipt date. Now, in the past, I've only done this a couple of times, or maybe 3 or 4 times, and on an occasion I've had to email their medical missions department and find out when, if they have approved the trip, and if they have any update on the supplies. And then typically they'll send you a manifest, and I always request tracking numbers for the boxes. Now, one really important thing about the application is when you're filling in the address to where you're going to have the supplies shipped, you want to make sure you put on that address, whoever's name. It has to go to a practice or a surgical center. And you'll want to put on that, for instance, David Brown, care of David Brown dash Medical Missions Africa. Let's say he was going to Africa. You want that on there because sometimes they get delivered to the surgical center, and the surgical center is so busy, they open it up and they unload your supplies, and surprise, we don't know where the boxes are. But if you have that on the label and you make sure everybody in your organization knows that they're coming, hopefully they can be on the lookout and you can follow the tracking and say, hey, our packages are going to be here at this time.
So one of the things in this too, sometimes Vision Outreach has doctors from other states, like Steve Anderson from Iowa is actually the leader. But since I have the most people going from my area, we're going to have the supplies sent to Great Lakes Eye Care. But they may come saying Steve Anderson dash Africa Mission. So it's okay if the doctor's not in your practice, as long as you alert your practice to say, I'm expecting some supplies to come here that I'm going to take on my mission trip. Or in your case is make sure you get it approved by your practice that they're okay with that coming. And then make sure, don't put your local doctor's name on it, whoever the lead doctor is for the mission, because Alcon will send that doctor a letter of donation saying, we donated all of this supplies to you, and that will go under his name. and then Alcon will be able to write it off with our tax ID number, but under Steve Anderson's name.
Yep. So yeah, that's good. Okay, so now we can go to the next slide. We've done the application. Now, lastly, we're going to think about the mission and the follow-up. When you receive your boxes, you're going to want to check those supplies and quantities against your packing list and your manifest. Most of the time, I don't think I've ever found anything missing, but on a rare occasion, maybe they didn't have something in stock. And I don't want to be caught off guard when we're packing our final bags for the trip. Then you want to divide and spread your supplies among your checked bags, making an inventory list of the name and the quantities of supplies of each bag. Then, thirdly, during your mission, you want to record the number of patients treated, the surgeries, or the type of care you gave them, because this information will be needed on the Alcon impact report. And then lastly, you do not leave any unused Alcon supplies in country. They try to do a really good job of any supplies that are not used to bring them back home and then redeploy them for other missions. So that's the four main areas of mission and follow-up. Now, as far as the impact report and leftover supplies, once you return home, Alcon sends you the impact report link via email, and you're going to fill that out online to record your data. It will ask number of surgeries, types of surgeries. It will also ask if there are any consumable supplies left over. If there are consumable supplies left over, it may ask how many boxes and where to send the return labels. Alcon states that their products donated are to be used solely for the current mission, and any unused product should not be left behind. And Alcon, in turn, will supply the label, and then they'll expect the supplies to be returned to Sea International for redeployment. So, you have something you want to add?
So a couple of thoughts about the leftover supplies. One of the reasons that Alcon is doing this is because some supplies in foreign countries, they have reps, Alcon reps in all these different countries that sell to the local ophthalmologist. But from time to time, some of these products that they've donated wind up what they call on the black market, which is just some vendor selling them at a cheaper price and undercutting the Alcon rep in that country. And it becomes a big issue to the local supply and demand if that happens. Sometimes I've given some of these supplies to like when we were in Niger and we had extra supplies, I sent them home with Wendy Hoffman, who was from Gabon. She was serving as a missionary in Africa, and I sent a bunch of supplies home with her. And I made a itemized, detailed list of everything that went with her. And when you do that, I don't know that they like that. At the time, I couldn't do much about it because I didn't know they didn't like it. So the best thing is to bring it back. But if you happen to give some away, make a detailed list of what you give, and then make sure you give the name of the doctor and the hospital and the country and where they're located at, so they have all of that information. The other thing is you'll see something somewhere in this list that says these donated supplies are to be used at no cost. And that's always a concern with some, because sometimes when we go on trips, there is a low cost, but they're not paying for the supplies. They're paying money so that we can give that to the local clinic so that they can help underwrite their expenses. And so although we're not charging for our services or the supplies. So we get hung up on that sometimes and say, well, we can't charge anything. Well, we're not. We aren't charging anything, and we're not charging anything for the supplies, but the local hosts are charging a little bit of something that helps their clinic stay afloat with some of the expenses that they will incur.
Okay. So lastly, we have, I guess you go to the next one. We talked about eligibility, where there are two main questions, which if you answer yes, that you're a 501c3 and you have a letter of invitation, then it will redirect you to the application. And we talked about all the details of the application. Make sure that's submitted at least 4 to 6 weeks prior to your trip. And then lastly, the mission and the follow-up, the details in making sure you have a good inventory of your supplies, and then make sure you return home with the unused Alcon supplies, fill out the impact report, and then send those supplies back to Sea International.
Let me mention one other thing that's good as you're going along. If you try to collect a few stories along the way, because they love a great story. And I know in pictures, and I know when we were in Niger this last time, we had an Alcon rep with us, and he actually wrote up a raving report for us that was great. And we sent that in, and I think it really built our credibility. And it's also something that they're able to turn around and share with their employees and their constituents and stuff like that. So that's not, they don't always ask for that, but it's nice to know if you've got a good story written up that they can share that with others.
They do ask that in the impact report that you fill out online. They will ask if there's any stories, if you have any pictures, and you can use as much space as you want to. So they want that because they want to share that with their organization.
And it doesn't hurt if you happen to have an Alcon sticker stuck on something in one of your pictures. You know, like we had the Minister of Health from Niger that dropped by, and the Alcon rep actually took an IOL box and held it up and took a picture of them with the IOL box, and there it says Alcon. So I think they really appreciate that too.
Okay. And last but not least are the links. In order to get to the eligibility questions, you go to Alcon's corporate social responsibility page. There's the website. Once you get to that page, you have to scroll all the way down to the bottom of the page. And there are 3 links. The top one at the bottom of the page says medical missions originating in the U.S. And you click on that link, and that's what will take you to another page that will come up, and then you click on eligibility questions, and then it will just take you through the process. Here's Alcon's contact information, and then of course there's my email.
Why don't you take a moment and just do a screenshot of that, and you'll have it. We will probably try to put this PowerPoint presentation along with the video in the folder for you guys to get at a later date. But if you are wanting this now, just take a screenshot and you'll have it.
Yeah, and then I don't know if this needs to be sent to them or not, the information, because it's helpful to have all this information for the application ahead of time. That way you can just breeze right on through the application.